All right, you're looking at 2023, the first Firenock Certified Drink Dealer program. Yes, this is Class 3, AeroSystems. This is actually an improved version of the building components. AeroSystem compared to AeroConcept system. What is the difference? The difference is the carbon inner tube and the glue. Yes, we're talking ultra slow set epoxy. Anytime you include ultra slow set epoxy and a carbon tube, the AeroConcept system. Anytime any component do not have carbon inner tube and super slow set epoxy, AeroConcept, AeroSystems. What are AeroSystem involved? That's what we're going to talk about today. Those are AeroSystems. The first thing we deal with, yes, aero bushing. Yes, AeroSystem is so heavily into targets, and most people do not understand and do not recognize. We in Firenock is deep into this. What is aero bushing? Aero bushing is the square peg in the round hole beginning of it. Because when you start dealing with the aero, there's over 2364 or a 315,000 ID. Why wouldn't you make a plastic knock of that size? The fact is that at that moment, aluminum bushing with the knock is a whole lot lighter than a plastic knock. Case in point, the first one is 315,000, called the ABU 315, is for 315,000 ID. That knock with the A knock, the bushing and knock combined is 12 grain. Remember, a Carbon Express plastic knock is 12 grain on a 246. This is a 315. The bushing with a knock is 12 grains. So what happens when you deal with like this guy? That's 380,000. You're looking at as a PS 27. 380,000 ID. With a knock on it, you're still looking at 17 grains. If you do a normal, say, a 300 size knock plus a unit bushing, you're pushing 35 grains. This is 17. And that is 12 with the knock. Can't beat that. Now, why do I make square peg in a round hole? Now, if you shoot target enough, you know this, when you got your bushing, what's the first thing you do? Get a Walmart bag. 1 hole, 2 fold, push it in, right? Why are you doing that? You try to pick up the slack. Because a thin carbon tube in the target size, a superly thin wall, they're superly flexible. And when you start doing that, eventually you put enough of it, you crack the shaft. That's no good. So what did we do? We go with 100% square peg in a round hole. This is reason it is one of the best design that are used for the 315 and above. Because when you shoot target shaft, do you know how thin that wall is? Really thin. So it's really flexible. And since I make the edges bigger, like the 315, the edges is actually 317. So I deform the shaft to form 4 sectors. And so this will go in perfectly. So yes, after you put the Firenock bushing with the nut into the shaft, you can still knock tune it, and it will never come out. And then on top of that, you notice that, I think we'll show the next, you know this right here? You notice that every single Firenock bushing, there's a lip right here. You know why that lip is critical? Because when you go competition and you are in the 11 ring, how many guys are going to be behind you? They're going to hit your arrow left and right. If you do not have this lip to protect your shaft and the arrow hit right here, the arrow will crack. So we actually got the umbrella system called the umbrella collar. See that? There's 2 separate US patents on this design. 2 full utility patent just on that. Okay, now for the 166 guy, arrow outsert. This is one of the best if you want to use 166. And I'm going to show you the benefit and downside and the difference. First of all, you notice that on the typical 166, this is your pivot fulcrum. Where is your broadhead fuel point? They are in front of the carbon. Am I right? Imagine if you deal with 166 like a Victory or the Gold Tip, you said Kinetics? Pierce. No, Pierce. You got to insert first. Your broadhead at the end of your broadhead end is in front of the carbon. And then the inside the tubing is going into the carbon tube. So, what is the effective of this system when it go into a carbon tube? From this point to that point is dead. Where is your arrow node? That means where do your arrow will flex when you shoot it? Somewhere here. Because they say, oh, it's 1.5 inches behind carbon. No. Your inner metal already make this carbon dead. So now you count about 1 to 1.5 inches. So your arrow is flexed here. And now you got a broadhead plus field point, a broadhead plus insert. That is this long. The moment you hit a rock, it's going to crack right here. And guess what? The weakest link is here. 90% of the time when you use a 166, people say they got a bend insert. They either crack the shaft right here, or they bend here. Give you an idea. A 166 in GL type titanium is not strong enough. Because you only deal with a number 19 drill bit, which is 160,000. That's not enough material. What's the second downside of this? This thing is solid. Right? The the American Archery Association in the OAM or the current ATA stated all system must be hollowed. Can you imagine if we make this hollow? It's even weaker, isn't it? So they make this solid. Well, if they make this solid, you as a Firenock dealer, you're in trouble. How the hell did you install NCAP on this? You can't use glue you can't use super glue anymore. You have to use epoxy. And you have to be very careful, very slow. Because you cannot have any glue because there's not enough moisture or air inside this tube to cure the super glue. Okay, now you see that is the reason. This is a typical, it's not a half out. They call it a half out because half the inside is inside, half of the outside. But you really look at the actual specification, the entire field point is in front of the carbon shaft. And you can see the final result is this long. Now, imagine if you shoot something like a Rage or like a Swacker, how much longer is that field point or broadhead? Now imagine you put a force on that. This entire thing, you now got your focus, you got to break right here. If not, you break it right here. Because your force is against you. It's pure physics. It's not about material. You are sticking out this far. Just like imagine, you are now trying to turn a nut. You're holding a 3-inch wrench compared to a 12-inch wrench. What do you think you're going to do with a 3-inch wrench? Nothing. But with a 12-inch wrench, you're going to turn that nut. Now imagine you now have all this turning when you hit wrong. Of course, if you hit perfect perpendicular, there's no problem. But right now, you're turning it here. And say you have strong enough that this do not break. The shaft is going to break right here. But in most cases, this is what happened. It'll bend right here. If you sell enough 166, that's pretty much exactly what's going on, isn't it? They will say, oh, give me stainless, give me aluminum, but give me stainless, give me titanium, because the original all bend. It is not about material, it's about design. Okay, so how do we overcome it?
Well, the blue is the ballistic color.
Yep. Now, this is what happened on the kinetics, on the Pinus Pierce. They got the ballistic collar. See that collar is right here? What did they do? It prevented this from breaking. Yes, absolutely. But it did not change the fact that it will eventually break here.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yep, exactly. It's a Band-Aid. Now, how do you overcome this if you really like the 166? Oh, on top of that, remember I tell you the 166? The non-concentric circle? If you put this in there, what do you think your arrow tuning would be? I put this in perfectly centered. Now, Gold Tip did a really good job. It is concentric. But a lot of other brands, if you take a closer look at the arrow shaft, especially after you cut the front, you look on it, the wall is not the same thickness on every single side. If the wall is not the same thickness on every side and you use this approach, what do you got? Isn't that funny? Okay, let's keep going. Now, when you look at the Firenock Aero outsert design, when I remember the time when Black Eagle and Randy Kids called me and say, Dodge, I'm going to launch a 166. Can you give me a system that works? I said, hey, I got a design. You can use it. If you take a closer look, this point to this point is 17 millimeters, which is about which is just over is 5/8 of an inch. From this point to this point is 5/8 of an inch. When you take a look at the fuel point, see where the fuel point difference is? The end of the fuel point is right here, right? The arrow shaft ends here. So what does this space means? This is your problem space. But look at the arrow outsert. The inside piece, this is only a 7 millimeter on thread, which means that no less than, if you put a standard AMO standard fuel point, the thread is equal to 10.5 millimeters. You should have 3 to 3.5 millimeters of thread right here. So the weakest link, which is right here, right? In this design, what is the strongest link? Same spot. You got aluminum, carbon, fuel point, all in this. How the hell did you bend this? You cannot possibly do it. It cannot be bent unless you break it. But in this, what are you bending? You're bending a 166 tube. That's it. Look at this design. Where is any point that is weak? The weakest point, see, this is the weakest point. You can see I draw a cross section to show you. This is your cross section. The weakest point of this is the cross section of this. As you know in physics, a hollow tube will resist bending than a solid tube. So, and look at the size difference. They are due to scale. What do you think of the bending resistance of this to this? It's about 300%. But let me go further. Most people will design this piece is either 303 stainless, 304 stainless, or 420 stainless. And some people go as high as GL5 titanium. Okay? I know somebody paid $120 for the insert. But guess what this is made of? This is not, yes, this is made of aluminum, but it's a 7075 T6, not a T5. So wait a minute, T5 is normal. How the hell did you get T6? I actually forged this piece. I make the basic piece out of 77 T5. Then I throw it into an induction forging process. I realign the molecule so that this piece, a 7071 T5, have about 82% strength of stainless steel. But the moment I T6 it, it's approaching 90%. So this piece of outsert is the same, technically the same strength as a stainless steel, but only 1/5 the weight. Yes, you heard me right. 1/5 the weight. Now the question. Didn't everybody and their cousins say, if you shoot 166, you need to increase your FOC? No, you don't do that. You want to decrease the FOC as much as possible. Because what happened to 166, we'll talk about it more when we go to the arrow on the 166 design. Because I don't want to confuse the issue, let's stick with the outsert for now. But let me remind you, we'll go into that. Now, look at this. How many sides I did? You see that on the arrow outsert. I want to sort of go into it, why we got a pattern on this. First of all, unlike every single outsert, you notice we got grooves. Take a closer look. The whole design of this groove is every one of the groove is different width. The whole idea is that I want to behave like a blood channel of a Bowie knife or a grooves on a potato knife. The whole idea is that 166, if you're old enough to remember the Beeman days, they are the first one who ever used outserts. The design have not changed. The difference is material and approach. When you start wedging, see this wedge right here? When you shoot through an animal or a back target, the moment you put it, when you go to this edge, you build a huge amount of pressure. You cannot pull this out. Because the pressure from the material and meat will now strangle the outsert to the point it cannot be pulled out. So what do? You relieve the pressure. So imagine this is the groove you are going in. You put knives on here. Just like if you're able to grab a round tube, no problem. What happens if the round tube got knives on it? It's going to cut. So you just slip right through. So these grooves right here is actually called the blood channel, and that's our pattern. So that you notice every single Firenock got blood channel on it. As a matter of fact, we improved the process. As of 2000, the new generation, 2023 to 2024, as we finished the old design, we found a better way to make it. We dropped the weight from 32 grain to 28 grain. So we make it even lighter. Because we're able to channel it even better at the same strength. Yes, you're finding out a lot of times. I try to make all my components lighter. Because you can always add weight somewhere. But if your component is certain weight, you have no way to remove it. So it's better for me to give you the lightest component. If you want weight, you can easily add it. But if I give you the heavy, how do you minus it? There's no way you can do it. Now, why do I make all these sizes? The fact is that every single aero company who make 166, based on batches, the OD is slightly different. So what do? You measure all your aero and find the closest, and you buy it. Though what number you see right here is in millimeter. Those are exactly the same because we measure all of them through our die. Okay? So yes, we machine each of them. They are all machined CNC. They are forged and then machined from the back to the front. So every one of them, you say 625 means the inside tubing is 625. Exact. So if your aero get tight, what do? You put masking tape, the blue tape, and you sand it. You hold it and you circle it and you do this. So you get the material off and you put it down. But you should never sand too much. That's the reason I got all the sizes. This is what an aero outsert is. The aero outsert will give you all the benefits. Now, let's talk about aero insert 101. The problem with inserts. Yes. Every single thing, including myself from the beginning of time. You cut the aero with the aero saw or a hacksaw or whatever. How square is the front? If you are like me, you find out you put an outsert on it, one side of the outsert, my outside insert will have no carbon, the other side would have. What does that mean? That's what you got. So, this is what you absolutely have to do. Whenever you cut an aero shaft, inner or outer shaft, what's the first thing you do to the aero? You square it. So if you are a professional custom aero builder, anytime you cut an aero, anytime you got an aero, what do? You square the damn end first, regardless, because you do not want that. That is detrimental. They will guarantee the aero bolt don't tune. Because if you're slightly off, remember, when you put an insert, the 300 ID insert on 300 ID shaft, what is the insert size? Is the insert 300? No, it's 299 or below. So if you have this condition, you're guaranteed that insert to be at least 1,000 off. If the insert is 1,000 off, what happens to your fuel point broadheads? Now that's your first problem. The second problem is that after you square it, on a traditional insert, see that? So what happens when you shoot that whole insert into, say, cinder blocks? You got a mushroom effect. Your insert got pushed into the shaft, right? Have you seen those before? Why did it? Because when the aero hits extreme pressure, the entire aero shaft will do a cylindrical oscillation. That means the aero shaft will actually expand and contract like this. The moment it expands like this, that moment, the insert is smaller than the shaft. It goes in. That's your mushroom effect. How do you overcome this? That was one of the questions I have because I got so many customers shooting scorpet, ventilators, and so on. They're shooting 400 feet per second. They're shooting into, they miss the target. Hit it! The insert now is inside the shaft. Of course, shaft is destroyed. Everything is destroyed. How do you overcome it? Well, that's what we did. The aero insert A, one of our very first 10th pattern. we chamfer the shaft 45 degrees. Now this is very important. You should never, ever, ever chamfer a shaft until it's being squared. Why? Because if you do not square it, when you chamfer it, whatever the high point is will end up grinding less. Your whole thing will offset like this. Because the thicker side will always have less and the thinner side more, the entire center will offset. So the entire process of using the center is junk. So the first thing you do is that you must square the shaft first before you apply the chamfering tool. That's where the work comes in. If you do not square the shaft, you apply the chamfering tool, this whole thing will offset. Because whatever the taller side will end up with thicker on this side, the thinner side will have less on this side. So the entire fill point, insert is already offset. You just lost the reason for the insert. But then the beauty of this insert, imagine this. If your insert is say a 205, a 204 insert, and the shaft is 201, if your thing is not chamfered perfectly, if the thing is chamfered perfectly, the insert will self-center. Am I right? Because just like when you put a ball bearing into a funnel, the ball bearing only have one place to go at the bottom of the funnel. That means it's absolutely perfect. See that? That's exactly what it is. When you, in the traditional way, when you put an insert into the shaft, how do you guarantee this do not happen? As a matter of fact, this is what happened when you deal with the HIT insert. The Eastern 204, all right? You put the glue in and you push the insert 10 millimeter into it. You're pretty much guaranteed 1,000 off. Why? The insert had to sit down. So now you're at least 1,000 off center. There's no way around it. Because it's then straight, the insert drop to the bottom. I mean, is there a way around it? Yes. Some people that are smart, they will put the fill point onto the insert, super glue, and then push it and stand the arrow straight. And they spin the fill point broadhead to make sure that insert do not drop based on gravity. That is the reason the absolute worst thing you can do is to put an insert and then leave it on a table flat. You should always put your insert installed arrow perpendicularly with the insert facing the sky. All right? See, that is what you're really trying to do, is the concentric. And this is what the funnel effect is, what the arrow concept A for angle means. Because you try to prevent this. This is what happened to some dealers who do the 204, and that's what they got. See the reverse taper effect, you can see that right here. But this is ideal. In life, you know there's going to be a gap on here and a gap on here. But if you stand your arrow straight up, it doesn't matter. The funnel effect will automatically take care of it for you. Now those are all the arrow insert A system. This year we added 2 more. Because see, when we first designed the 204 system, which is like your kinetics, your Victory RIP, your Carbon Express SD. See, in the old days we have these 3. Because of the Carbon Express, we make the OD201. Because the Carbon Express is 202. So what happens if you decide to put it in kinetics? You got 3,000 slop. You put this insert into the arrow and leave it on the table. Now you are 3,000 cantered. Isn't that sad? You know, 3,000 canters is equivalent to about 0.125 inches on a 1-inch fill point with the neck. That means your fill point will turn like this with about 1/4 inch off. You think you want to shoot the arrow? That is what the problem is if you do not square the arrow and send the arrow straight up. Because you remember, the edge of this is 8 millimeter. And a 204 is way smaller than 8 millimeter. So that the moment you leave the arrow on the table, you are guaranteed to do this. So the only way to prevent this is that you need to stand the arrow straight up. Being a dealer, you know you got those 12 dozen arrow boxes with 144 holes. That's the best box to use after you build the arrow. Stand them in those boxes. Then you know you're straight. Is that something you need to check? Absolutely. after you put the insert in it, you need to hold the insert on and then put the arrow on the APS without the sending block, and you turn the arrow. Do you know why you need to do that? You're hydroflowing the glue to make sure the glue is going around the arrow evenly. And then you take your hand off the insert and you spin the arrow to make sure the insert is indeed concentric with the shaft. Then you pull the thing out and you push down one more time and you spin it one more time. You know why you do that? Because when you hold the insert, when you spin the shaft, you may move the shaft away from the insert. Although it's centered, it may have gap in it. That's the reason when you finish doing that, you push the arrow down again on the table to make sure they fit perfectly, and put the arrow back in the spinner to spin it one more time to make sure they're straight. Then you set the arrow onto a box. If you do not do that, I will guarantee you, if you do 24 arrows, there's going to be at least 8 of them that's no good. That percentage is way too high. Now this year in 2023, we added 2 more inserts. The reason we add them because in the old days, the insert is based on 201, right? So what happens, you use an arrow using arrow weave or kinetics, there's 3,000s. 3,000 is a lot for the glue to fill. So we split the system in 2. The O is called the A1A20, and then aluminum, stainless steel, titanium. We now add the new one, 204. We call this the 204L, but 204A with the 4 on it. That means the OD is 204,000. That means you can fit it about as perfectly as you can in a 204. Why? Because it's 204, 205, 206, and 207. So now we split the whole 204 into 2 segments because there's too many people who do this and they are not as careful. So let's divide the variance in half. So from 201 to 207, I cut them in half at 204. So anything below 204, use the old version. Anything over or equal to 204, use the new version. So I make both people happy. Because see, if you shoot fast shaft, if you shoot Carbon Express, you can't use a 204 because it's 202. Like I got a big batch of customers from France who love the Carbon Express SD and use my old 204 because I make the ID 204. The moment they put the insert in it, it cracked every single shaft. And the moment I make everything 201, the people in Gold Tip have problems because they have 3,000 slob in it. So you take out both sides. Then the next, go back to the previous one. The next size, of course, this is your 235. This is your 246. This is your 300. Now the 300 is for the dealers. You guys got this because only dealers can buy the A1A30, A1A30A. You're the only one that can buy the brass simple. This is one of certified and trained dealer only item. It's not on the even on the catalog. It's on the catalog, but it's not on the web stores because only the dealer can buy this. And this one, of course, is stainless. Is 100, and then we have the 315. So the guy who want to shoot the Challenger and so on, the Gold Tip 93, this is the insert. Have all the basic benefit of the insert A in it. Now a lot of people will go into crossbow next week. This is where the Monster series come in. The Monster series is identical to the previous design, but because of the speed of crossbow and because the inability of most people to tune arrows, everybody wants a heavier insert. People say, well, just use a heavier field point or broadhead. The fact is that when you go to anything above a 100 grain broadhead, the choice is very limited. So the only other choice is to improve on the weight. So in 2022, we add 2 more inserts. The 125 brass and the 125 stainless in the reverse taper design. And still have the old brass and stainless. So now for the 300 size crossbow, you actually have 4 inserts, 2 of them at about 100 and this at 125. Okay, next one. Okay. The difference between the concept of why HIT over the arrow insert A. What are the downside and benefit? You can see that the HIT insert, as I said, the moment you glue it, you're guaranteed to be off unless you use the field point drop method. But the biggest issue with HIT, which I'm going to give you the technical end, why this is not a good design. What is the fuel point sitting on? Carbon. What does carbon do when you impact? It crumbles in microns. So the molecule will slowly drop. That's the reason when you shoot a HIT-based arrow, even in a full metal jacket, after 20, 30 shots, the broadhead will always be loose. The broadhead is loose because the carbon behind it is gone. When you hit it, you crumble the carbon, it's gone. Did anybody did a good thing about to do it? Yes. When HIT first came out in 2004 and 5, new archery product did a really good job. They put in what they call it, the HIT broadhead adapters. So they put a piece of aluminum that encapsulates the back end, like a collar. Now the fuel point is hitting the collar before it hit the carbon. That's the solution that I think is one of the best. But now, you haven't seen anybody did it. But then the difference between this and this, look at that. This is arrow insert A. See that the reverse tapered? But look at it. The end of this whole section is still inside the tubing. So where is the weakest link? It's actually closer to here or here. How strong is this? Extremely. Well, how strong is this? This is still weak because that is a link between the two right here. But you're going to find out it's going to break behind where the HIT is. What is the downside of this? If you do not chamfer this, you did not grind this correctly and chamfer it and sit it straight, this is going to be off. Now see a different distance from this point to this point. If you misalign the HIT, did you see that on your fuel point on broadhead? No, it's hidden. You will only find out when the carbon is crumbling on one end more because the HIT insert is crooked or split in one end. That's the downside with HIT. But in the case of the arrow insert A, the moment you make any mistake, that means it's not installed right, your fuel point will tell you because it will do this. That's the reason you want to make sure you use my process. Put the arrow insert on it, hold on the APS without the block, you spin the shaft. You hydro flow the glue to make sure the glue on both sides is flowed correctly. And you spin it to make sure it's straight. Then you leave the arrow straight like this. And yes, do not forget, after you do that, you push the arrow into the insert one more time to make sure there's no gap here. Because when you have gap, you crumble the glue. Yes, those are all procedures. And that's exactly what we did. And in 2019, with the 166, this is not ideal. So I come with a whole new concept called the stalker insert. You notice that in the typical insert on a 246, you put the fuel point, see the neck of the fuel point and the thread right here, right? For me, with the 166, it's called a stalker A. Guess what? Reverse taper is still here. And the broadhead screw onto the stem. That's the reason it's called arrow stem or called a stalker series. So yes, everything is proprietary. I did license the technology to Swackers. So their new Levi Morgan system with that, it's my license. But then you notice even on the 166, I still have a hole here because I follow through down to the T. This hole is 0.75 millimeters. No, I did not drill it. Guess what I use? I use EDM, electromagnetic discharge. I use electrons to drill this hole. So you follow the standard. So even you insert the insert, the air is still able to pass through. So you can install Firenock correctly. Now this is our basic arrow insert A stalker. See that? That's the basic stalker stem. Those are the fuel points. So you can see the fuel point screw on top of it. But look at it. You actually got two O-rings right here. So the moment you put the O-ring on it, put the fuel point on it, this two O-ring is going to hold the broad fuel points for you. It's not going to shake loose. It's a dual O-ring system. And they will give you the lightest. Okay. You guys may not sell a lot of arrow points, but this is one of my big sellers. And unfortunately, there's tons of copies out there. And I've been fighting Amazon, eBay to make sure that they're all out. Because I just like whack-a-mole. I just give cease and desist order on this side, the other side comes out. Because this is such a good system, and the entry of this is so low. Because if you machine this 2 groove, you got my pattern. Anybody who machine can easily add 2 groove. The beauty of this is that you notice every single field point, after you shot, I don't care what it is, it will eventually get loose. Am I right? But when you put 2 O-ring that is precisionally designed, the moment you shot it, the first O-ring will bind with the second O-ring, will prevent the field point never ever comes out. That's the beauty of it. Because on top of that, if you look at it, that's basically a pipe fitted system. So the moment you screw this field point into an insert, this field point will forever be concentric, will never ever come out until you physically put a plier and screw it out. Yes, the moment you shot the arrow point a few times to the target, you have to get a parallel plier to clamp the front of the thing to spin it out. Because the O-ring, every time you shoot it, as the broadhead will go into the thread, the O-ring will engage it and make it tighter and tighter every time you shoot it. And not to mention, we make it in 8mm and 9mm. Those are the basic size. The 8mm, as you can see, from 45 grain all the way to 200. And in the 9mm, from 45 all the way to 250. And this is the third one that we make. See this size? This is unique. This is a 9mm. If you look at it, this is the same size as a 100 grain 9mm. These two is the same. But that was one unique part. This is made of titanium. This is 45 grain. And so this is 45 grain. This is 45 grain. Why do I make a 45 grain titanium field point that looks so big? Because if you are really into target, when there's 2 arrows on an 11 ring, and you shoot this into that target, if you just barely touch the arrow, you have full glance out. You'll be in 8 points. But if you shoot a one with a slope angle, just like a typical bullet, you're able to squeeze in and be in that 11 ring. See, if you've been target long enough, this is very important, you know. 3 points, you're no longer number 1. Lose 1 point, you're no longer number 1. That's exactly what it is. Okay, this is a fun one. My first ever broadhead, the Tomahawk. Yes, it's not a tomahawk, it's a Tomahawk. You shoot it with an ultra high-speed crossbow, no less than 130 KE. When it grabs an animal, see this part? None of this sharp, this is all blunt. Have you ever been punched, mistake like you're trying to screw something with a screwdriver, and you missed, and the screwdriver sort of go into your hand? Have you ever done that? What do you think that feels? Now imagine instead of a screwdriver, it's an impact screwdriver, and it keeps turning. It's going to go through, tear the skin right off. You end up a hole about this big. That's exactly what the thing is. If you shoot the Tomahawk with arrow bow G, and you shoot a turkey at the breast, you'll kill it. Not any guts. You shoot the breast. Because what it does is that it transfers all the KE to the animal. Can you shoot this with the vertical bow into, say, deer? I prefer not. But if you're a traditional guy, you can sharpen it. It will work on a traditional bow. I do not recommend this broadhead at all for compound bow. This is great for crossbow. That's the reason when I first come out, the specification is that it must be shot with 130 KE or more crossbow, which is your Tech 15, your ventilators, not even your Raven 10 or 20. You have to be out 15, 20 and above. The out 26 will not work good with this. All right? That's what the Tomahawk did. But let's look at it. The Tomahawk, go back, sorry. Look at the surface, very important. Look at this surface. There's 2 totally flat surfaces with a flat head right here. Imagine this. When the flat head touches a surface, the most important point is these 2 edges. and it's turning. See the tearing effect? But since it's not sharp, it cannot tear. It grabbed the skin, and it grabbed the skin more and more and more and more and more. If you look at the catalog, one customer of mine shot a doe. It teared the entire neck right off with a hole about 8 inches. The skin and meat are gone. Just tear it right off. So what do you think of that? Pretty traumatic, isn't it? That's the reason it's called a Tomahawk. Now, when you look at the Tomahawk, can I do something to this? Look at that. There's a flat surface right here, right? See the flat surface and 2 slant surfaces. Take a look at the next screen. That's exactly what I did. I added a second edge. This is actually a complex single bevel. It is not a dual bevel. It's a complex single bevel. Let it sink in for a while. It is not just a single bevel, but a complex single bevel. Because if you take a closer look, when you come down this side, you can see that you got a point there, right? The point is truly center. But the 2 sides are totally different. See that? What is the benefit of this? A single bevel will give you a slit. This will give you, and I forgot what the shape it is. A top on flat on the top, flat on the bottom, but the whole thing is angled.
Parallelogram.
A parallelogram. You give you a parallelogram wound channel. And because it's a parallelogram wound channel, it cannot be closed. A slit will close. A parallelogram wound channel, because a tear on the top and a tear on the bottom, it cannot be closed. So what really is the Dagger 125 is actually a Tomahawk with these 2 sides shaved off and take away the weight on here. So the Dagger 125, by the way, all these are MIMmed. No, all these are high pressure die cast. So it means that they are actually went through the die cast process under high pressure. They're extremely, extremely durable. But do you know why I pretty much no longer make the one in stainless steel, only make in titanium? Because the stainless steel, when I make 125, say I make 1,000 of 125, I only have 200 that's 125. Because high pressure die cast, the density is not consistent. So I end up with a whole bunch of 121 all the way to 130. And everybody want 125. Exact. So what happened to the rest of the 800? I can't throw them. I mean, I can grind some of them off to make it 125. But I end up with a ton of 127, 130 instead of 125. So this makes it extremely expensive to make. This is very, very good head because for material, it's a high pressure die cast. So the annealing process is in die cast process. The moment you pass, the molecules are all facing the same way. It is extremely durable. And they are not expensive. You're looking at $59.95 for 3. Then a lot of guys love the design, but they want it lighter. So I make it a light version. This one is the only dagger that's only 3 millimeter thick. Every single dagger is exactly 4 millimeter thick. Because I need to meet the target of 100 grain. This is a high pressure die cast. Again, when I make 100, I end up with 93 all the way to 105. Everybody want 100. So after this batch is sold, they will be retired. So I still got some. But the fun part is that you notice that that is a third one right there, which is exactly the same size as this. So this two is the same, identical. But this is made of high pressure die cast 303 stainless. This is GR5 titanium. That is only 85 grain with a long stem. A lot of people love that, and a lot of people hate it because it's extremely hardened to sharpen. But then you notice one major benefit of a titanium blade. Have you ever been cut with a titanium blade? I used to have a knife that's made of titanium and ceramic. When titanium or ceramic cut yourself, you don't feel the hot. When you cut it with steel, you feel that hot. When ceramic, nothing. Titanium, Nothing. You just see blood everywhere. That's the benefit. That means if you shoot the titanium broadhead through an animal, most of the time they don't know they've been shot. They just bleed everywhere and died. So the shock and fact and heat that steel do, titanium does not. Now the titanium, when you sharpen it, it's pretty easy to sharpen because it's just like you got a basic, your Arkansas stone. You see this edge, this round edge right here? That actually is called the sharpening handle. So you grab the broadhead with your finger, this part of your finger, on that round edge. You're able to push the broadhead perfectly flat on the Arkansas stone. So you just go back and forward 5 times, you got the edge. So you turn it back and just clean the edge up because of roll. You'll be as sharp as you need. Is it razor sharp? Answer is no. But do you need razor sharp? Remember, cutting is based on speed, force, and angle. That's the best angle. Because I move, this is still a 17-degree angle, the best for cutting. You're shooting a crossbow, a vertical bow, at close to 200 miles per hour. You are worried about sharpness. Maybe one of these days you need to go and look at a grizzly bear paw and actually touch the front. Is it sharp? But when you put enough force on it, it'll be sharper than you can imagine. And that's actually I learned this from Fred Futuray, who own aerodynamic solution. You don't need to be sharp as long as the angle is right and your speed. Does sharpness help? Absolutely. But now it's between effort and performance. You can do 2 days of sharpening. It won't make that big a difference. Now, if you shoot a 25-pound bow, yeah, you're going to make the difference, but it's all be legal. So anything with 40 pounds, that's plenty sharp. All right, let's move to the next one. 2021, G5's patent on the MIM process expired. Yes, I did spend some money. I spent 6 different modes to make the MIM process. The beauty of MIM process is called the metal injection molding process. I can be as complicated as the surface I can make. You can see that, see how the grooves and everything, right? If you can imagine somebody machine this, you'll be out of your mind. The beauty of MIM process is that I can make 100 of the broadhead. They all within 0.5% of the target weight. You hear me right, 0.5%. That means if we make 1,000 or 125, they all will be 124.5 to 125.5, which I call them 125. The downside is that the injection molding mode is not cheap. But you get what you pay for. So yes, those are $69. Now $69 a dozen, the 3 right here, up to this point. This is $99 for 3. This is $129 for 3. Why? I don't sell too many of this. I sell a ton of those. How many people need a 250 grain broadhead? The Africa big guys, the 200 usually your Cape Buffalo, 175 your Cape Buffalo, 150 your hippo and your eland. And those are the deer. So those are the ones I sell the most. This is for people who just want to have fun or the guys who want to deal with real Africa big game. So you can see it's the same idea design. Now, we go to the next one, swing blade. By the way, this is part of AeroSystems. The swing blade is a broadhead I was being asked by a very nice gentleman out of Texas. He's telling me he don't have time to practice. He got lots of money. He wanted able to practice with field point. On the day he hunt, he able to take the field point, put my broadhead. You need to shoot the same with any veins, under any condition. You have to hit the same spot under 80 yards. That's what I come up with. The swing blade. This is a very unique design. The swing blade consists of 3 sectors. First, the head. Second, the body. The third, the blades. Well, I'll share with you the history of how I come with this. I was way back then when I was driving up to Chicago on Highway 55 to pick up my kids from the mother. I saw a guy on that slow lane, open the door and close twice. You see, he's driving, and he opened the door and he closed twice to close the door. You say, why can't we design a broadhead that were able to do something similar compared to every single broadhead out there that have to open forward, open backward, open sideways? How about we do the same thing as a door? See, if you take a close look at a swing blade, these blades, every one of them, this is actually a hinge. So you're opening the door this way and close. If you look forward, this is what swing blade is. There's a hinge here. The blade actually do this. Every single broadhead do this or this. They open up like that, or like a Spitfire, front to back. Rage, you move the blade in and out. This one do not. This one actually do this. What are the benefits? This is what I want to really talk about, the difference. And yes, and then, can you go back to the previous?
I wanted to show. Hold on.
Yes, oh, that's a good picture. That's fantastic. See the deployment? See how the arrow, the blade actually go from the center point out. See that? Thank you, Shannon. Okay, let's go back to the previous two slides.
Please hold.
Now you notice that there's a lot of very advanced design in it, which I do not intend to do it, but it come out to be because it flies so well. I had to find out why. If you look at it, there's 3 holes in here. See that? There's 3 channels in here. It is very critical. As a matter of fact, this is a channel that is very similar in concept, but not in design, with the ramcat. The ramcat have a hydro shock system here. There's a scoop. Okay? This is not. It's a channel. This is where the screw go into it. But the effect of this is the same. So when it was high speed, when the air hit this part, guess what? The air was going to reverse turbulence. The air is going to come out really hot because the air is being compressed and then expanded. So what happened to the air pressure on this side, this point? The air pressure is lower. What happened when your air pressure is lower? Guess what? The air pressure is lower, they hit the blade. What is the effect of that blade with the air pressure now? Less. That means that if you shoot this in ultra high speed, the blade have technically no effect on aerodynamics. Isn't that cool? Now, you notice that in the future, there may be different weight of the tip. This is made of 304 stainless. It's hardened. This is hardened to 52 HRC. So technically, this tip, if you really dare, you can hold it on a piece of glass and cut it. That's how sharp this is. And then we make 3 bodies. The first body is made of aluminum. That will end up with a 75 grain body. The middle one is made of stainless steel. It's a 303 stainless. That will give you 100, and third will give you 125. So technically, with this head, with this 4 blade, okay, you got 3 times 4. You got 12 different broadhead you can make. Now this is New York legal because I had to make the back blade, because in New York you can have anything that is sharp. It's considered barbed. But just again, mathematics. Base times height divided by 2. Base times height divided by 2. So this too is 100% identical. Isn't that cool? In weight. But it looks so different. Now you can see that this is actually called the Raptor. The back blade is actually 89 degrees, not 90. So make this is the New York legal vein. And it's strongest in thickness and ability of all swing blade. This one is the Falcon. You see the angle? Aerodynamic wise, it's the best. But if you take a closer look at every single blade, it's all single beveled, top and bottom, reversed. In other words, I got a thick piece of material. The moment it's single beveled on both ends, I make it slanted. That's how I'm able to do front and back cut and still do aerodynamic correctly. You notice that this is the Falcon and the Raptor. This is the Talon, and this is the Sabre. Why do I make the Sabre? Okay, Okay, this is specification. The Falcon and Raptor are good up to 550 feet per second in 30 miles per hour in AeroWing 3. They will hit a 1 inch on a bench at 130 yards at 35 miles per hour wind and maintain that inch with no effect, even at 300 revolution per second. The Falcon and Raptors is rated up to 550 feet per second out of air guns. So you're not going to exceed it. It'll be pinpoint accurate under wind. This one, the Talon, is what most of my customers shoot vertical bow. It's rated up to 315 with AeroWing 2 or AeroWing 3. I prefer AeroWing 2 with it. And of course the Sabre. The Sabre is for people who love the broadhead and just say that I don't have enough blood trail. So I give you 3 2-inch long Rapala knife to give you blood. This will have more blood than you know what to do with. And yes, this is soft. It's made of pure spring steel. The difference in weight between these two is 1 grain. On 3 blades. So the 100, even with such a long blade, is weighed 101 grain. I think it's acceptable because the material is different. Yes, you do have a full 2.5 inch cutting surface. This will not cut bones, but you'll go around bones. That means if you shoot into a deer and the hit ribs, the blade will collapse and keep going. Now, the major thing about the swing blade, as you swing open, is that you notice that they are single bevel on the inside, which means that none of the blades were deployed until you actually cut something, because the top side is 100% identical to a chisel design. That means until you cut something, it will not open. So the cutting process is what opens it. That is a very critical design factors in this. Most of the broadhead, you go through something, it opens, right? This one, it goes through in the process of cutting, it opens. That means if this broadhead hit a bone, will it open? It won't, because it got a bone. In other words, it will not stop by the bone. It'll keep going, because it never opened. Like this broadhead, you can do the outside diameter when it fly is actually 3/4 inch. Come on, think about it. This is still, even fully closed, is legal, because all the state, the minimum broadhead size to be used is 3/4 inch. So even it's closed, it's still legal. But the moment you go and cut, it becomes 1 3/16 for this two. On the case of Talon, it becomes 1 5/8. And the case of the Sabre is 1 13/16, which is technically 2 inch. But the cutting surface is 2 1/4. All right, let's go next one. You can see that. That's how the deployment process. But you can see how the wind behavior with it.
All 12.
Yep, so you can see that. Just based on that, you can see that with 3 bodies, 4 different blades, you've got 12 different broadheads. You can buy the body with the head, and you can play with the blades. And then when you start dealing with, the fact is that when you shoot a single bevel or 2-blade broadhead, what is the #1 rule to tune it? The blade must speak on the same spine as your shaft, which is 12 o'clock. So if you are not able to put the broadhead you want onto the insert when you insert into the arrow, how the hell did you turn your broadhead to be 12 o'clock?
That's the other one.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's the one you're talking about.
Yep. Let's go back to the previous spacings first.
This is the adjustment one you're talking about.
Right. But let's go back to the previous. Now, you notice that we make all our broadheads 8 millimeters. Every one of them. But what happens if you shoot crossbow? Crossbows are all 9 millimeters, or 5/16. 5/16 and 9 millimeter are different by 3 thousandths. 9 millimeter are thicker by 3,000, which is neglectable, but not from 8 to 9. So 5/16 and your 9 millimeter are different. So what we did, we now actually make a spacer, which is 8 millimeter on this side and 9 millimeter on this side. So if you decide to use our 9 millimeter field points on a regular bow, you can use a spacer this way. Or you can reverse it. Like, for example, you shoot a crossbow and you use our broadhead. You now from 9 to 8. That's what the slant spacer is. See, we address every single small problems. You just need to know what to look for. Now look at that. So, this is the copper spacer. For example, now you design, you make up your arrow. And then 3 of your arrows are 3 grains lighter. What do you do now? Rebuild it? No. We make copper spacers on 3 grains all the way to 6 grains. So you can put the copper spacer there. That's your 3 grain. You're good to go. All right, next one. Now, for the broadheads, we make 5 different sizes. The 1 millimeter, the 0.1 millimeter equals to 27.5 degrees. Of course, there's variance because when you make 0.1 millimeter, it can be 0.11 to 0.12 to 0.98. So you can stack them until you're able to make the broadhead perfectly perpendicular. Usually, what most people, the 1 and 2 number 1 seller is 0.1 and 0.25 because you are dealing with 27.5 and also with the 44 degree, not 45. Because when you got 45, it's going to turn like this. When you're 44, then you can make adjustments. How heavy are those? 0.03 grain, neglectable. So you can stow 6 of them, it's not even a grain. So now you can finally adjust your broadhead to your arrow to be perpendicular. How many people even know this exists? But how many people think about their 2 blade when they do this? All right, this is the tool. Everybody who build arrows, this is the tool you absolutely have to have. Remember I said, before you do anything, CTI, your arrow, square the damn thing first. Okay? And then make sure you have enough of the sandpapers. So go ahead, go to Walmart, whatever, buy those double side and cut them into small pieces, put it on. When you get old, tear it off, put a new one on. That's how you get speed. And yes, get yourself a nice pair of gloves when you do a lot, because this is going to hurt. Yes, you're grinding it. Now, this is the part that is critical. A lot of people, when I talk about the insert on the half out, that's how you do it. You put the shaft on and you look down from the top on the outer edge towards the edge of this. So when you hold the insert and you spin the shaft, what are you doing? You're hydroflowing the glue. And when you finish it, spin it to make sure the insert is indeed correct. This is one of the, anytime you use 204, 166, if you don't do this, I will guarantee you can't build arrow correctly. And then on the case of customer who tell you they cannot, quote unquote, get the field point broadhead to fly right, use this. And for customer who have tell you that they hit the back of the arrow and the shaft is not good, remember the spacers, the roller support can be moved. So you can move this forward and re-square the back so the broadhead can speak perfectly. So this is what the APS would do, all 6. Now, since G5's patent expired, now I'm able to sell you this block. And you can put it on your PAPS. Now you got both hands you can do. So get a few more blocks, get that, put it on your PAPS, go for it. It's much easier to deal with. Because when you do one hand and have to hold the bat, that's pretty annoying. So when you're 2 hands, it's so much faster. And that's the reason I can sell you this and this and this all separate. Because as you say, the license from G5, the patent expired. But my patent still hold. I still have 12 years with my patent, so other people can't make it yet. All right, next one. You see the APS roller? This is what made when 2015 we discontinued it, because we found out that the bearing was so small, it hurt your hand so much. We actually go to this. We use the PAPS roller. Because I literally make hundreds of thousands of this. So you can see a difference. It's so much nicer. And because when you do true rollers, the arrow shaft actually reflects like this, right? That's the reason you need more roller. But with the crowned bearing, you're always on the center. It doesn't hurt the shaft. And then a lot of people say, you know, we really can't use this well. So we go into this model. But then as we sell so many, and I got a good deal with anodizing this body. So you can see the new one is all type 2 level 3 anodized. And yes, the screws on it is titanium, and those are flange bearings. This will last you beyond lifetime. And now, you know why there's an O-ring right here? Because when you put your shaft, now, basic geometry. Look at the circumference. I'll go back to, look at the circumference on the previous one.
Look at the circle in the middle.
Yep, see the difference? See the circle right here? See the circle right here? And look at the circumference. So this, if for this to run this same amount of space, this has to turn 3 times. This only turn once. And when you do this, because it's metal, this is rubber. You can now never, ever, ever damage the shaft. Can it spin as fast as a Pine Ridge? No. But do you want to spin as fast as the Pine Ridge? Answer is no. You want to spin slow enough to make sure you can see what's going on. Anytime you spin too fast, it takes me a long time to come with this size, because when you put on it, you're able to do just about 3 turns. And when they slow down, you can pick up any imperfection. Because see, when something is spinning so fast, everything is a blur. You can't see it. That's the reason I designed it to be just slow enough and fast enough for you to see the imperfection. Then you can do something about it. This is called the Aero Spinner, Super Spinner. All right, next one.
That's it.
That's it.